Hello, I'm Antonio Neves, and this is an Ad Age special report. Verizon Wireless was created 9 years ago, and back then, it chose a marketing strategy focused exclusively on the quality of its network rather than the novelty of its handsets. It even emphasized this point by making a network test technician its corporate icon. But all has not gone smoothly, and a market gone gaga over glitzy smartphone brands rather than boring transmission technology. At the recent ANA annual conference, CMO John Stratton reviewed Verizon's marketing history, the original network-centric logic, the huge 2007 disruption caused by AT&T's revolutionary iPhone, and today's new offensive against AT&T, featuring the hard-hitting Verizon Maps campaign.
If you think about the wireless phone, it actually, from our perspective, is an extension of the network. It's part of the network. If a customer has a bad experience with the device, it reflects very poorly on the overall network experience. And so at this time, we created what is now widely regarded as the most rigorous and toughest device testing and certification program anywhere in the world. We put our partners, our device partners, through hell as they tried to get the product through our lab testing process and out into the market. Well, the consequence of that was, at some points, an issue around our being late to market with some of the more interesting devices at the time, like the Palm Trio, if you remember that device, or the Motorola Razr. We were, in fact, quite late with those products relative to our competitors. But we did this making, again, a conscious decision that came back to the fact that, first and foremost, we'd made a commitment to our customers around the quality and reliability of the service we'd provide, and until the device passed our high standards of testing, we would not put it on the network. Just a few short years after this point, major disruption happened in our industry that I think I need to tell you a little bit about. The launch of Apple's iPhone. This was kind of epic in our business. Very, very disruptive. This was, without a doubt, the most groundbreaking and significant device launch in the history of our industry. And it had an immediate impact on a number of things. One example, this category of product, these mobile computing devices, which we kind of call smartphones, had for years been about 10% or less of total unit sales. Well, in less than 18 months, across the industry, that whole market grew to the point where it became 40+% of sales. It's a tremendous shift. Now, the iPhone was unique in our business for one specific reason. Apple was the first company that actually went and marketed their device directly to the end user in a meaningful way. Historically, devices had been marketed by the wireless carrier. And so what's noteworthy about this is that Apple created a separation between the device and the underlying network on which it performed. And over the course of time, customers began to disassociate, to an extent, the notion that the network was still part of the equation. And what we saw emerge was a new category driving purchase intent, which was wireless device. You know, I went to a carrier because I wanted that phone. That had never really been seen in any meaningful way before, but it was beginning to happen in our industry. And so at Verizon, we found ourselves in a bit of a crossroads. And the question inside the business was, does this network quality thing, which we had built our business on, still matter? Now, there was no shortage of industry experts who would tell us that this network-centric approach had definitely fallen out of time. And in fact, as customers increasingly were drawn to the sexiest device, we seemed to be a little bit that way. And it caused questions, even as we look back at our guy, you know, Testman. He started to look a little bit tired. And even though he still had high iconic value, and we saw that when we used him in advertising, great linkage between the brand message and the company, we wondered as well if he had lost his relevance. If we believe that network quality still matters, actually, we believe it matters now more than ever. Because if you think about it, there's close to 300 million Americans who right now have some kind of a wireless device. And a great majority of those people consider that wireless device to be their primary means of communication. Primary, right? But the data services that these new smartphones enable, things like web browsing, app downloading, social network activities, all of these things are just beginning to be adopted by customers. And yet, as we look forward, we fully expect that that will change, and that customers will begin to rely on these services as an essential part of the way they conduct their lives. And so in that case, the network becomes essential to what it is they're doing. And as customers begin to rely on these services to that level, the underlying network that provides the service is also equally essential, because customers are going to expect that anytime, anywhere, they'll be able to remain connected to their lives. We actually believe that we're beginning to see a repeat of what happened back at the beginning of this story in year 2000. That customer demand is putting tremendous stress on the underlying data networks. Some carriers are struggling to keep up with that demand, and as a result, customer satisfaction with those networks is beginning to feel great pressure. We need to remind the market that a cell phone is only as good as the network it's on, and so that's what we're working on now. And the fact of the matter is, we did some research to try to find out where our competitors' 3G coverage actually was, and we couldn't find it. They didn't provide it. And so what we did is we went with an industry source, a third-party source who maps roaming for the industry, and asked them to, hey, map our 3G coverage and map our competitors' 3G coverage. And what we saw, we sort of suspected, but it was almost astounding. Now, we had already completed our fourth quarter holiday work at considerable expense. We had this stuff which is now on a shelf because we recognized that there was a moment in time, there was a bit of fact here that needed to be expressed aggressively to the marketplace. So in very short order, we were able to react and respond and enable a broad and pretty complete campaign that we think is going to be very effective. So what I would tell you is you have to be, I think, willing to maintain high degree of receptivity for what's happening around you, and then build in the facility in the organization to rapidly move, change direction as necessary.
And that's it for this Ad Age Special Report. Thanks for being with us. I'm Antonio Neves at Advertising Agent New York.